We talk a lot on this channel about Palantir, and we talk a lot as well about the Palantir NHS contract that we have been waiting on for what feels like a very long time, and delays keep happening. Now, I've said in the last video, I believe, that I think the deal is kind of confirmed. I don't know that. We need to wait for the official announcement. But there does seem to be a lot of backlash and concern from the British public and even people within the NHS about what an FDP actually means. Is it going to be collecting data, selling that data, stealing that data, spying on that data? And then also, what does it mean for a US private company to be the supplier of that FDP? Those concerns are there. And I've said that those concerns time and time again need to get addressed. There needs to be some education that actually helps people understand what an FDP is, why it's so beneficial for the NHS, what problems it will solve, and how it actually interacts with data. And actually, Palantir don't have control, if Palantir get this contract, of the NHS patients' data, nor are they going to be extracting that data and selling that data and things like that. There has been a new document that has been released from the NHS themselves that we're going to look at today. I was made aware of this on X by Deep Value, so thank you very much for sharing this information. But it is really interesting because it's a guide that basically breaks down what an FDP is, what it does, just concerns that people might have as simply as possible. It's a really easy to read guide for the average person. Unfortunately, I haven't really seen that advertised anywhere. People are obviously checking the NHS website that are in the Palantir community quite often. It does provide some real insights and real value, and I can see in this document that there may be some hints there about whether Palantir have got this contract. There may be some hints there that they're kind of trying to address these really, really unfair claims that data will be stolen and sold and things like that. So we're going to get into that, but just before I do, I want to give you some more context of things that are happening around the UK health scene at the moment that can be impacting this NHS Palantir deal. So I put out this post on X yesterday and I said the pressure around the FDP Palantir NHS deal intensifies in the UK. The NHS have a new health secretary. So we've changed, we've now got a new health secretary. Her name is Victoria Atkins. She's actually been visiting the Chelsea and Westminster Trust hospitals, which is obviously where Foundry has been present there. So that's interesting. But anyway, Foxglove. Foxglove are one of the main campaigners, main organisations against Palantir getting this contract. I've spoken about them before. So as we've got this change and Victoria stepped into this role, Foxglove are basically sending out emails to people that are on their emailing list, urging people to email Victoria to, and I quote, make sure that she is feeling immediate pressure to drop the Palantir NHS data deal. Aside from that, there's also been a letter sent to Victoria, or going to be sent to Victoria, from a company or an organisation called We Own It. The letter is titled Reinstate Our NHS as a Fully Public Service. What I've said here is I'm not sure if this letter was written with the FDP deal in mind necessarily, but part of the letter does say private solutions can't and won't fix the staffing crisis, long A&E waiting times, or help vast majority of those on the waiting list. On that point there, the FDP will absolutely help those things if it's as good as we think it's going to be. So I don't know, private solutions, FDP I guess is a private solution, it would help those. But anyway, I've also pointed out, I personally want the NHS to remain public. It's a great asset that we have in the UK and we're very lucky. But Palantir supplying, if they do, the FDP, does not mean that Palantir are purchasing or that they will own the NHS. I've said just like the NHS using Microsoft's software doesn't mean that the NHS is being privatised or being owned by a US company. So then we move on to this new document that the NHS have put out. You can see here it's quite a lengthy document, 39 pages. We will fly through it because you'll see that it's printed, the text is massive. It could have been put on like 5 pages. But the whole point of this is that it's a very easy read guide. You'll see here, it is definitely aimed towards people that don't understand the language around an FDP and things like that. So it's really, I think it's a really positive move. Let's just have a quick read through and just see what it says. So introduction, what is data? These are the things that are going to be in here, questions that are asked a lot about the FDP. And like I said, this document has only just been released. I think it came out yesterday or the day before. So it's very, very new. I have to ask, why are they doing this? Are they trying to mitigate against potential backlash, trying to put documents documents in place ready to supply people when they announce the deal. I don't know. So the NHS uses information to manage patient care and plan services. This information is called data. The NHS in England does not keep patient and healthcare data on one computer system. This is the problem. In the NHS and in healthcare in general, it seems like information data is so disjointed. It is everywhere. It is not in one simple place. Problem with this? Patients might need to explain their medical history to different NHS staff. Absolutely true. When you go through the medical pathway in the UK, you do have to repeat yourself a number of times, and the information just doesn't seem to get passed on as you get passed on. It's a bit weird. What is data? So I think this is important because actually you start to see that data that is involved in this FDP is just data that already exists. It's not that they're collecting new data about you. They don't suddenly need to know everything about you so that they can sell that data. It's data that is there already. It's just bringing it into one place so it's a lot easier. So what is some data that the NHS need? Well, the number of beds that are empty, the number of beds that are in use, patient information for patient care, treatment and care information. And this just means that when this isn't all in one place, NHS staff have to spend more time checking and finding information about patients. This is a giant waste of time when the NHS staff could instead be helping and treating patients. And then they talk about some ways that improving the NHS will be beneficial: better care, better health, more lives saved, very simple stuff. Then they talk about the COVID vaccination program. Of course, they've not named names here, but that program was helped by Palantir. So interesting that they're giving that as an example. Then they move on to the FDP. So let's just have a read here. The FDP is a new computer software that will be used by NHS trusts that run local hospitals and the 42 integrated care boards across NHS in the UK. Not by GP services, interestingly. It says here actually, will not include any information from GPs. The FDP means NHS organisations can connect the patient information that they already have in a secure way and support NHS staff to provide better care. They're not collecting new information. The FDP will only share data to support patient care and improve health and care services. This is really, really important, this bit. The NHS will be responsible for all data kept in the FDP and will keep it safe. This is an indirect way of saying Palantir or whoever do not have access, nor control, nor own that data. It's still the NHS's. They will be responsible for all data. Each NHS trust and integrated care board can access their own FDP and manage all their own data. Any software company that supports the FDP cannot use or access patient information. The NHS are telling the people of the UK themselves that a software company, whether it's Palantir, cannot access the patient data. They can't. It's not the way that this works. And NHS staff can only access confidential information about the patients they look after. And then it goes on to say health and care workers who support NHS staff can also access confidential information, these pieces of information. Other organisations, however, cannot access. So it's not suddenly open to everyone or anything like that, and they do not collect new information. Then it says, we asked different NHS organisations to test software like the FDP. We found out how they used the software to collect information about the following. I won't read all of this, but you can see. And what did they find from doing this? Well, they found real benefits: shorter waiting times for patients, operating theatres getting better, giving patients the treatment that they needed, more people not having to stay in hospital for longer than they needed, treating patients sooner. Those are all real benefits that are going to help the NHS. That is why we need the FDP. This is also interesting. The NHS ran a fair and honest process to choose a company to provide the FDP software. There is a lot of pushback and concern about how the procurement process wasn't fair and it wasn't an honest pathway, and that Palantir were often called the front runners, given unfair advantage. I don't think that's the case. I mean, they're saying it themselves, so I guess we have to go with what they're saying. But it is interesting how they say they've ran. That's already done. So assuming that they've already picked who it's going to be, and now we're just waiting for that announcement. We did many checks to ensure we chose the right organisation and to make sure the FDP is secure as possible. They are also buying new privacy enhancing technology. So they are taking this very seriously. And that technology will be in place before they use the FDP. Then it goes on to talk about some more security issues, how they work closely with the National Cyber Security Centre just to make sure there's no cyber attacks and things like that. trying to dampen concerns. They are also setting up an FDP advisory group of patients and professionals that are going to actually give advice on changes to the FDP and how to explain these changes to the public. I think that's a pretty big deal because there does seem to be this communication issue around the FDP, around the supply of the FDP. So if you've got people, average people that can communicate this well, I think that will really, really help. How does the FDP benefit patients? Well, it supports 5 main areas: elective recovery, and it gives some examples here as well, vaccinations, managing the health of people in the local area, care coordination. Interestingly here, NHS organisations testing the FDP have seen long-term stays go down by 30%. And number 5, managing equipment and medication, making sure the NHS put the resources where they're needed and spend the money on the right things. The FDP will not cover more than these 5 areas without consulting with members of the public, patients and other groups. Then we get on to questions that they are getting a lot about the FDP. What is it? How it will make things easier for health and care organisations to work together, look at patterns of data, share technology solutions, what it's actually going to help to do and why we need that FDP. And then it talks about what information is available. So it says the new FDP will only include information that the NHS already has and uses. I think a lot of people are concerned that this means that they're going to have to now supply way more personal information. Where is that information going? Who's it going to be seen by? That's the next question. Who can see this data? Only NHS staff that need to see it. And there's going to be a lot of rules around who can access it, what they can do, and what they can actually see. Next question, what will the FDP do? This is all kind of repetitive, talks about the benefits, which we know day in, day out. It gives some examples here, so please pause and read it if you do want to. The evidence is clear as to how beneficial this is going to be. Stays in hospitals for over 21 days went down by 36%. That's a big deal. If these sort of use cases are coming out for it, and these are the sort of benefits that we're seeing just by tests on a large scale across the whole of the UK, if this goes as it plans, it could really, really change things for the average person. I like this benefit as well. The FDP will mean that NHS staff do not need to write so many reports. That will free up their time. That means they can spend more time doing critical care. How is patient information protected? Well, information stays within the NHS organisation, doesn't go to Palantir or whoever else. Only people that need to see it can see the information. It's not just shared freely, and the use of information of the FDP still has to follow current protection acts that are in place, and it's only used for reasons that will directly benefit the lives of the general public. This is interesting because in the Houses of Parliament, where David Davis spoke about how having Palantir supply an FDP will make people opt out or whatever he said, this directly addresses that. Can they opt out? No. Patients cannot opt out of sharing their data for research planning, for research planning, but not for direct patient care. The FDP uses data for direct patient care, such as booking a patient in for an operation. So it's not really possible to use the NHS and opt out of giving your information. It wouldn't make sense. It talks about more to do with the protection of the data. And then it says if patients do decide to opt out and not share their information, of course, their choice will be respected, but I don't know how that will work in terms of actually getting them treatment when they need to, because no doctor is going to be able to access their information. Can patients choose how their personal information on FDP is used for their care? The new FDP will only be used by NHS staff to offer patients care, so it is assumed that patients have given consent to access their personal data. If a patient does not consent that their personal information supports their treatment, they should let their health care professionals know. If a patient does not consent, it may affect their care. This makes sense. How can the FDP help patient care? Again, we're not going to spend time going through this, but it's all available. I'll leave a link to this document in the description below. How can patients access their information? So under the data protection law, anyone at any time here in the UK can request a subject access request. That is basically, I don't know if that's worldwide actually, but where you ask an organisation for all the information, all the data that they have on you. I used to do these at my old employer. They are massive. We used to do them manually. Massive stack of documents and data that you have on people. So you can still request that if you've got concerns. Then lastly, what are the penalties for misuse of patient information? Will misuse of data be taken seriously? It absolutely will, but it is just not the case that Palantir or whoever have access and can sell and control this data. I did find it interesting that the NHS has uploaded this easy to read guide all about the FDP. I think that is a step in the right direction, and I hope we continue to see more educational pieces addressing these concerns that a lot of people have. Hopefully that will help. And again, we just now need to wait for that official NHS announcement, and fingers crossed that all the concerns don't actually matter too much and come into play on actually switching who this will be if they've already decided it's Palantir. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was insightful and informative. I will see you in the next video very shortly.